Hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko, back once again with a brand new episode. This week I interview pro wrestler, comedian, and suspected extraterrestrial, the one, the only, Ravenous, Randy Myers. We discuss the theater kid to pro wrestling pipeline, authentic expressions of self, and how to support mental health from the open mic all the way to the squared circle. Randy is an absolute delight, and you're gonna love this one, so it's time to lean back, get comfy, set your volume at a reasonable level, and enjoy my interview with Randy Myers here on Friendless. This week on Friendless, I have someone who I have been admiring from afar for some time, who I've had the chance to do some comedy with and all kinds of stuff. They're a wrestler, they're a comedian, they're a performer of all kinds. The one, the only, Randy fucking Myers is on the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. I appreciate the effing in the middle of that. I'm not used to such profanity in the middle of my name, but I like it.
You really gotta emphasize it.
For
you
sure.
know?
Yeah, that puts
Right?
a little stank on it. I'll accept it.
So Randy, I mean, right at the hop, I have a poster that you signed for me at New Year's here on my bulletin board that I look at every day. So it's a really special moment to have you on the show.
Oh, shucks, man. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're a big source of inspiration for me. And we're gonna get into all the different reasons why throughout the interview. But before we can cover any of that, for listeners who may not be familiar with you, who the fuck are you?
Good question. Good question. I think you did a good rundown at the beginning. I'm a performer mostly, I would say, by heart, which leans into the forms of professional wrestling. It leans into stand-up comedy. I've been doing some clowning. I've done improv. I've done sketch. Basically anywhere I can kind of get up on a stage and kind of express myself and my emotions and make a connection with the fans. That's kind of what I'm all about.
I love it. I love it. So pro wrestling is very near and dear to my heart. I have never stepped foot inside a ring, and I doubt I ever will. But
Never say
I
never.
hold well, right, exactly. But I also I just hold wrestlers in such high esteem. I just have such a deep respect for the performance, and I'm really curious to start us off. I'm curious what drew you into wrestling in the first place. Like, how did you get involved?
Well, I was like, so I'm from Calgary originally, which has like
Mm,
a famous history within professional wrestling, right?
mhm.
So I was
I'm
always
from Silver
involved.
Springs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
always
yeah.
involved in like theater and stuff like that, and then never involved in like sports or anything like that. So when I turned like was starting to get to my teenage years, still involved in drama, but having that like angst starting building up in me and
Yeah.
not having an outlet for it because I didn't have any sort of physical place to put that. And I think
Mm.
physicality is is the easiest and the safest place that's and sometimes the only place that you can put some of that like inner turmoil and that rage where you can
Yeah.
safely put it into a place. And I didn't have any of those outlets. So I started using drama as that
Mhm.
outlet and like started like I fell in love with professional wrestling, watching Mick Foley was my like my like the door, my gateway
Yeah.
drug as it was.
Yeah.
Seeing the like how that was theater, like really
Yes.
like seeing that at like 13 and it really landing to me that this was like extreme theater. So and really being like interested by that, I started doing it in drama class in 10th grade and then got kicked out of drama class in 10th grade. I like to say I got kicked out of drama for being a little too dramatic. I had my first heartbreak around those same times. So
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like I said, had all this angst, had now this like emo heartbreak energy. I needed somewhere to kind of put that. So
Mm.
doing it in drama class wasn't the right place to do it. Wasn't safe falling off the stage. You know what I mean? Emulating Mick Foley's fall off the Hell in the Cell,
Yeah.
Uh,
By God. Yeah.
right. So I got kicked out of drama class, came home, remember telling my mom that I got kicked out of drama class. And she's like, well, that's like your thing. That's like what are you going to do now? Like basically now I'm stuck with you all the time.
Yep. Yep.
Like what's going to get you out of my hair? And so I professional wrestling was right there, like Stampede Wrestling. It started up and
Yeah.
had a reboot in Calgary in 1999.
Yep.
And I started going to those local shows. And that kind of got me the bug and kind of made me realize that like it kind of like made it like plausible and doable because here I was watching these people that were like not larger than life superstars that you saw on WWE or television or at the Saddle Dome or whatever. This was at like the pavilion. This was like local
Mm.
people. These were something maybe I was capable of reaching and achieving, So they had
Yeah.
an advertisement during the television show, which would air like shows were Friday night, and then the following Saturday those shows would air. So I would look for myself on television and all those things, and there was
Fuck yeah.
commercials for Teddy Hart's Pro Wrestling Camp, which at the time was the only under 18 pro wrestling camp in the world. So,
Gotcha.
which just happened to be in my hometown. And so when I got kicked out of drama class, I thought about that commercial instantly.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm going to go to wrestling school. So I went to Teddy Hart's Pro Wrestling Camp for kids. And then, yeah, I started there and then moved my way to the dungeon eventually, and
Oh,
then
nice.
wrestled on those Stampede Wrestling shows that I was going to. So I eventually made my way to being on the shows that inspired me to actually take a chance at.
Unreal. That's incredible. Having grown up in Calgary too, the Hearts are such a bedrock of, Bret Hart's my favorite wrestler of all time, and so it's just like, hearing all these names is just like, oh my god. And the fact that you got to wrestle in, train in the dungeon is just like that just I already respected you, and that just
Oh,
skyrocketed.
yeah.
Um what was it like, sort of like, what were those first kind of classes like? You often, when you read, wrestler biographies or anything like that, they often talk about sort of like taking their first bumps and taking their first, and it being a bit of a shock to the system. And what was it like for you? What was that experience of like having watched it and then now you're doing it?
Totally. So I had any foolish young wrestling fan, I had taken some bumps in my backyard. We'd
Right.
started up like a wrestling promotion in my backyard, and were fools and had stolen parts from construction sites around the neighborhood to like make ourselves this ring.
Yeah.
So I'd taken some bumps before. Were they real bumps? No,
Yeah.
but I'd definitely
You'd
been
fallen down.
I'd been winded after being spine busted on this
Yeah.
on like my backyard. You know what I mean? Which is
Yep.
like
Yep.
rugged and not a smart thing and not the thing I recommend anyone to do. Please don't
Yep.
try this at home. But then when I went to camp, it was actually the conditioning that was really hard on me.
Mm.
Like the bumps were very hard, and to learn the proper technique was more like learning body positioning and stuff. Like I said, I was so against physical, like PE or gym class or any of
Yep.
that stuff,
Yep.
sports and competition and all that was just not in my blood. So, like the idea of like running these ropes more than twice, and the idea of like just how exhausted I was, and like having
Yeah.
zero kind of like lung capability and stuff like that. I was so against gym class that I opted out of doing the physical part of it and like did essays. Like I
Yeah.
would go to the library in school and learn about tennis. And then I would write an essay about tennis and all the intricate details of it and the history of it rather than actually playing tennis.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how opposed I was to it. So uh I think I had always had I was an emo kid, so that kind of I remember one of my very first practices, I turned around and they tapped me on the shoulder, and some jerk in wrestling slapped me across the face, and they're like, "Oh, you always fall for that one." And I just kind of like didn't react to it.
Yeah.
And then people were like, "Oh, you didn't have a reaction, didn't either was just upset about it, was angry, wasn't anything." And then people were like, "Oh." So I kind of became the bump dummy because people were
Mm.
like, "Oh, this guy's willing to take a little bit of a hit." And I didn't like I said, I wasn't athletic, so I needed to learn it from a different end. So I was learning it
Yeah.
kind of from more the taking rather than the giving end of things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that also was how I kind of worked my way into the dungeon. Because at that point, it was like there was TJ Wilson, there was like Tyson Kidd, Natalia, and Davey Boy Smith Jr., Teddy Hart. There was all this like second generation of Hart kids,
Yeah.
and they didn't necessarily want to beat each other up. They needed
Right.
somebody else to beat up, right? So I became that person. And so that's how I
Gotcha.
got into the dungeon, actually, was not even like my tuition was paid with my body,
Right.
blood, and my sweat, and my
Wow.
tears, and
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
puke. But yeah, that's basically how I got in, was like Bruce and Ross Hart were kind enough to like see that in me, that I was a guy who was willing to kind of take the punishment, be more than willing to learn, willing to set up the ring, willing to kind of do the things some people weren't willing to do or weren't even willing to do or able to
Yeah.
do or whatever, or just I was the man or person or human shaped creature for that job. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
do,
I
yeah.
kind of the bumps were my favorite part.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess, uh, you would hope that as a wrestler you would be good with taking bumps, right? Like that would,
totally.
that probably plays in your favor, I would assume, right?
Yeah, it definitely does, and it still has to this day. Like people still like because I have been doing it for like 20. This is my
Mhm.
25th year in the ring,
Wow.
so it's sometimes people, and I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong; I don't want them to like take liberties or throw me around or anything like that. But
Sure, sure.
sometimes they'll be a little bit softer on me than I think they have to, or think
Mhm.
that I won't take a bump
Yep,
because of either like the years or because my wrestling style can be a little bit like lighter and sillier.
yep.
Um, but that doesn't mean I'm not willing to still get like take a good bump or two. I like it.
Go
Feels
rowdy.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, actually. Speaking of, like, so the character that you portray in the ring, I adore, and I do love that kind of the goofiness, but then you can kind of still throw down when you need to, and I'm endlessly fascinated by how characters kind of get developed through the years, and I'm wondering, was it sort of a piecemeal thing for you, sort of, piece by piece over the years, or were you really clear about who you wanted to be from the get go, or how did that kind of formulate?
I think it was like a combination of the two. I think I was
Mm.
kind of clear of who I wanted to be from the get go, but I was not able to portray that from the get
Mm.
go. Like, I don't think I necessarily saw it as clearly, but I think it is still kind of always been in one kind of direction.
Mhm.
I think there's been like branches that have kind of stemmed out from that, but I think it was like I picked my wrestling name like Ravenous Randy Myers when I was still wrestling in the backyard. Like,
Right.
so that was like been my name for like more than my wrestling career, longer than my wrestling career. Like I was
Yeah, yeah.
looking at my VHS tape collection and there was a movie called Ravenous, which was like starring David Arquette. And that's where Ravenous came from. And then
Fuck yeah.
I had Austin Powers there. And then I thought of like, do I make you Randy? And I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice. And then I had my horror movie collection. And
Yeah.
then, so I was like, Voorhees is too obvious.
Yep.
Kruger is too obvious, but Myers feels like a real person's last name. So that's where
Yeah.
Ravenous Randy Myers came from. So it always kind of had, I always kind of knew it had this punky edge to it. It had this kind of horror movie vibes as well. That kind of the Randy from Austin Powers is a little bit like sexuality and innuendos and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So it's kind of that played in. So I think it's always been there, but whether I was able to fully, like I said, portray that from the beginning, no, not at all. It was like you said, piecemeal in that way, where it
Yeah.
was like getting in front of an audience and like testing myself out. It was my first time being like in front of an audience as an athlete. So I'd done it
Right.
as like a performer, but I'd never done it as like something I knew I wasn't. So I was having to
Mm.
go in there and like people say wrestling's fake. The only thing that's fake about it in my performance was me pretending to be an athlete at that point. So then I would try and go in there. I was so focused on doing the moves and making sure I did the things right. Especially I was in there with some like talented athletes, so I didn't want to mess
Mhm.
up their stuff, right? And so I didn't do a lot of personality to start with, even though it was obviously always in me. And then I remember letting go one time and like turning to a fan and just making a really ridiculous face out of sheer frustration because they were half
Yep.
heckling me. And so
Yeah.
I turned and did that. And then the reaction I got from the fans, and they was like, oh, it let me loose. And I was able to actually be better at the athletic performance part of it because I
Mhm.
wasn't so tight.
Tight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I was able to
Well,
actually be loose and move. And then from that, it just kind of, from that, I kind of, then I turned my hair into a mohawk. So then that became like the punkier edge. And that was kind of the first place I was willing to kind of show who I truly was in the ring. And then from there, kind of coming out about mental health stuff was kind of the
mm.
next big step. And that wasn't for like years later, but like 10 years
Mhm.
later, coming out with like talking to the audience about how I was suffering from depression at that time and was going to take like a step away from the ring for a moment. And the connection I made with the fans after that, like, was a different level. It wasn't like this cartoon level, Ravenous Randy, the cock of the walk who always rocks the hawk, kind of like your radio DJ or some
Y
BS. It had
Yeah,
this like
yeah.
layer of reality to it and this like truth and this vulnerability. And I didn't expect to get the reaction I got from the fans and the performers in the back to show like wrestling's always so masculine, especially,
Yep.
had been for years and years and years. And it's kind of opening its shell a bit, but that I hadn't seen anyone do anything like that personally. And to
Mhm.
have fans come out to me and reach out to me and wrestlers come out to me. And then it ended up making like one wrestler who was a filmmaker as well reached out to me and was asked if I wanted to do a film about it. And so that's how we
Jesus.
made like the Weirdo Hero web series, which is like a little thing on YouTube that you can watch, which is about a professional wrestler who wins the big title and thought that was going to make his dreams come true. Local title. And then he's still depressed. He's still suffering with the day to day
Mhm.
nuances and banality of life and how he's not happy. And that isn't all it takes to make him happy. So
Yeah.
I was able to make this like story. And then that was able to like kind of blossom. So here I was like, thought I was taking a step away, being honest and telling them where I was at. And then it actually gave me a new platform to speak about things that I think were more important than I'm going to see you next Sunday in a steel cage, you know? So that was another step. And then from there, eventually being able to like come out in the ring as I've come out multiple times in my life and be more
Mhm.
open about my sexuality and being pansexual and being non-binary and kind of those things, then opening up about that was like another kind of place where it showed where if I was able to be vulnerable here, maybe if I'm vulnerable and truthful here, it can make my performances and my art and my connection that much deeper. So
Yes.
I think that's kind of how step by step the character kind of developed and given the stages to do so, the platforms to do so. In Alberta, I didn't think I could come out with the mental health stuff.
Right.
It would have been harder. I didn't think, especially not come out with the queer stuff. That
Yeah.
was when I was already being heckled. They could see through my body language and,
Sure.
like bullies can sniff it. They can smell it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everyone there was, but those were what they would find as a weakness, quote unquote, not a weakness. But so having the platform to be out here in Vancouver to talk about mental health and then eventually down to Seattle, which is where I was able to kind of come out of my shell and with my sexuality and add that to
Mhm.
kind of my little package.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think that's again having, like I said, those stages and those audiences that were willing to evolve and
Mhm.
to, yeah, be there and see something new and let things change and like let wrestlers be wrestlers and to see people as they are and let them be who they are.
And it is that funny, one of the things I love so much about pro wrestling is that it is a very symbiotic relationship between the performer and the audience, and there's such a catharsis for the audience to get to just scream and yell and all those kinds of things, right? And it is so much more rewarding as an audience member to see a performer, being themselves, just obviously elevated because it's pro wrestling, so you need to be big,
For
right?
sure.
But being rooted in some level about authenticity really, you said audiences could bullies could sniff out things, but I think audiences in general can sniff out authenticity,
Totally.
and you might not always even clock it necessarily, if you're not seeing it, but when you do see it you go, oh, bingo,
Exactly.
right?
For sure.
And that's, having been to multiple boom shows and just seeing the reaction you get when you come out and seeing, I've brought someone new almost every time I've come,
Thank you.
and right, because I'm just like, I'm like such a apostle for boom,
I love that.
right? And um and I don't often tell them anything about it. I just say it's pro wrestling, you're gonna have a blast, come on, and almost without fail, every time you come out, I mean, obviously I'm screaming and shouting,
Mm,
but but they respond so strongly to, they love the, your anxiety is lying to you, and they love just the whole package that you're bringing, right? And I wanted to obviously, like, don't I'm not going to make you trauma dump on me about your about your mental health, but I'm curious about how your experience with bringing that out into the open has kind of helped your personal mental health.
yeah.
Like,
I think just like it's it the more we can be open with in general. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
think whether it be in the ring, whether it be with our family, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
any way, you make connections that you don't make any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Opening up yourself to that vulnerable side, it's only been rewarding to me. It's so scary, but then when you do it, it's only been like, I've had people come up to me and share with me. This last show I did at Defy on Saturday, I was
Mm-hmm.
on my way out to the ring to do a promo. And like, I was like, the match before me was on, and I was just kind of doing my standard before I perform pace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nervously thinking whether I have to pee or not, and knowing I don't have to. But
Yep.
then somebody came up to me and they shared with me that they had been struggling with some mental health issues. And it was right before I was about to go out. But they
Mm-hmm.
just opened up to me, and I'm not going to tell them, I'm waiting to go out. I took it in and I sat there, and it's not somebody that I'm necessarily overly close with, but it's
Sure.
somebody I do consider a friend. But just haven't had this kind of opportunity to be close with them. And now it'd be hard to say that we're not close because we both
Mm-hmm.
opened up in that moment. I eventually had to heard the 3 count and had to run to the ring right then. Um, and I was kind of like, how's this gonna what kind of am I gonna bring any of this to the ring? That was my
Yeah.
nervousness. You know what I mean? Like, am I
Yep.
gonna be able to still give what I needed to kind of the nuances and the energy and the emotional beats of the promo I needed to cut because it was kind
Mm-hmm.
of a heavier one. Could I still get there and still be lighthearted as well? But it was, I don't know, it was compartmentalized or something. It was
Mm-hmm.
like the work I was meant to do. Like that was meant to happen at that moment. I went out there and I fucking slayed the promo,
Yeah.
and it didn't. It, I was there for him. I wish I could have been there longer.
Sure.
That's the only thing. So it's moments like that. Like any time, I guess is what I'm saying is that when I'm on my way to the effing ring, if you need to take me aside and tell me that you're struggling. I will give you the moment I can give you. I can't promise everything, but that was strength. I was worried it might take from me, but it gave to me
Yeah.
because it's it's one more person that I'm sorry that these people struggle and I hate it. And part of me wishes I was the only one, but if I was the only one, that would fucking hurt too goddamn much. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that I have a fucking army, and I'm glad that we're all together, and you've got my back and I've got your back, and I'll fucking give you every last second until I hear that 3 count and I have to be in that ring.
Yep.
And I know they would have done the same for me.
Yeah.
And so in a mental health, you always feel like you're alone, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it kind of wants you to think that, or I don't know what the it is, but it's isolating.
Yep.
So talking about it and opening up about it, as you know, through this, it makes connections. It does the opposite. So
Yeah.
I, I think it's helped me so much. And if it wasn't for wrestling to begin with,
Mm.
I don't know where I'd be here. Like it was a lot. It's done a lot for me.
Yeah.
It gave me a place to belong. It gave me a place where those inner angst that I didn't know where to go. And I thought it was going to damn because I didn't know where to put it. But
Yep.
then I had a place to put it, and it was in the ring, and it still is in the ring, and I fake fighting my friends. You know what I mean? It's done with consent. It's done with love. It's done with safety. It's done
Yeah.
in the least reckless way that you can have those kind of unfortunate masculine or just aggressive energy. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? We have it as
Mm-hmm.
humans and we deny it and we're forced to shove it down or turn it off. And some people can't. And
Mm-hmm.
we see it goes bad places. So wrestling from the beginning has been kind of my mental health place. So
Yeah.
having it be open about that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. Well, and it's that outlet, right?
Yeah.
I was telling you just before we started recording, I was literally in a therapy session just before this, and one of the things we were talking about was this idea of when you hold respect for yourself, it then breeds the proper connections that you need, right? And when you sort of demand respect of yourself and you sort of hold yourself up, the people who then enter your world either respond to it well or they don't. In which case, that's fine,
Totally.
right? But it's like this thing you're saying about you did what you could, but you still had a thing to do, right? And so it's like that to me is actually a sign of much deeper respect than if you were like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna blow this off and I'm just gonna be like that. That would be way faker,
Yeah.
and in a lot of ways even more dangerous. to be like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I'm just going to give to you and give to you. Right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think that's gorgeous that you were able to do that. Right.
And it worked out. So yeah,
Right. Exactly.
thank God.
Um, so one of the sort of center explorations of the show is this idea of community, and the pro wrestling community obviously is not like one singular thing, but I find it so endlessly fascinating, and I'm probably going to say some variation of that way too many times for the next hour, right?
Fair enough.
It's just I just have no inroad, and I don't like to pretend like despite whatever I know, despite my exposure to it, I'm not an insider, so I'm not going to speak like a wrestler or any of that kind of bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Um, um, but at the baseline, I guess, what I'll start with is the question, the overall question of community, and then I'd like your sort of perspective from the pro wrestling perspective. But at its baseline, what does the word community mean to you?
Mm. I think it means people of different backgrounds and coming from different places to bring all the things that are special about them together. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think I like the idea of like the metaphor of like a potluck, where
Mm-hmm.
like if everyone brings a different dish that represents them and their authenticity and like where they come from, then we'll have like such a beautiful bounty of different kind of meals and stuff like that.
Yes.
Where if
Yeah.
we all like aim to bring the same thing or trying to fit in one box, then we're gonna have so much potato salad that we won't know what to do with it, you know?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think and if we're all coming from the same place, we're gonna bring the same dishes. So I think
Mm.
the idea of we're better, different. And so
Yeah.
kind of keeping our differences and our strengths, and sometimes those are our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities as well,
Yeah.
and kind of uniting them for the greater cause. And I would say that's
Mm.
what I see as community.
I think that's gorgeous, and I really appreciate that. My take over the last couple of years as I've been asking this, I've definitely fallen more into the camp of like different is better, and like in a lot of ways, I wouldn't say conflict is good, but friction is good.
Mhm.
Like I don't want everyone in my community to be on the same page as me. I want there to be some pushback. I want there to be some like like that kind of thing,
I
right?
want to learn because that's how I
Yeah,
learn. You know what I mean?
that
I don't think I'm right, and I don't always want to be right. Most of the time, I don't
exactly.
want to be right. You know?
Bingo. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Like, please prove me wrong, please.
Exactly, exactly.
Right?
I have a
Yeah.
lot of anxiety. I have a lot of fears, a lot of worries, and those to be proven wrong, I'd be so happy.
Right, exactly. But so building out of that with the idea of of pro wrestling, how have you found that the sort of the communities that you've entered in through this performance, how do they sort of reflect communities at large, or uh, building out from that, what are some lessons we could take from the pro wrestling community and apply them more broadly?
Well, I think, like I say, like I think um stuff as simple as like I think it's important to show what you like. I think that really matters. I think if you have something that you like and brings you joy and you get on the mountaintop and you scream about it, you know who's going to
Yeah.
come? People who also like that thing. So,
Yeah.
like from within the wrestling community, a good example is like the NWO shirt. You'll see a stranger that they don't, two people who don't know each other at all, and then all of a sudden they're two sweeting each other, or
Yes.
like whatever, like giving each other the hand gesture for the shirt, and that just builds this community within it not brings people within. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but you know what it is. They make this
It brings them
connection from
together.
people from
Yeah.
strangers. Strangers.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
just they see each other from they don't even necessarily speak the same language. They're, they might be politically different. There's a whole bunch of things that could be different, but there's this thing
Mhm.
that kind of binds them together, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that's something people can take away from wrestling and just being not ashamed to wear that shirt. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And to wear
Mhm.
the banner of the thing you like because that's how you tell other people that you like this thing, and then that's how you make a community, and that's how you find your friends, right?
Yeah.
So, like, an example of that is, like, I'm fairly open about the things that I like. Like, I like, weird collection of, like, retro toys, and I like, yeah, like, kind of, like, offbeat, quirky art stuff, and, at the last show, I'm a big Elf fan, and at the
Mm.
show one Saturday, a fan came up to me and gave me an autographed picture of Elf because they
Yes.
know that I like that because I'm open about that and I share it and I wear Elf patch on my jacket. They know that I like when they shared that with me. And I had this
Yeah.
great moment with this person I wouldn't have met any other way except for the fact I share what I like. And then that happened to be what they like. And
Yeah.
right. So I think
It's
that's
magic.
That's the thing I take away from wrestling.
I'm gonna shift gears a little bit because I had seen you perform before, but we only met through. It was actually my very first time doing stand up comedy
Cool.
at the Anxiety Show with our mutual friend Meg, and that's how we first kind of crossed paths. And I'm curious. There's this whole other side of you that does all these other kind of art performances, and I'm curious what sort of got you to shift gears into stand up from pro wrestling.
Well, it was always stand-up. Like, stand-up was a thing I always wanted to do when I was very
Gotcha.
young. Like, it was always I remember watching, like, Caroline's Comedy Club and, like, Evening at the Improv and stuff like this, and, like, David Letterman when I was young, like, all these things were, like, what I grew up watching, and, like,
Yeah.
was the thing, like, long before wrestling, when I was young, I wasn't into wrestling because it felt like everything was so hyper masculine at a point in the '80s when it was like Transformers and it was G.I. Joe and it was Terminator and it was
Boy, boy,
wrestling
boy.
and it was
Yeah.
all this like super hyper aggressive male stuff. And I didn't necessarily understand or see the drama in
Yeah.
professional wrestling at the time. So it really
Sure.
took to like me seeing Mick Foley and seeing this character that was like showing this kind of side of weakness or like this vulnerability
Mm.
that I was like, oh, and this real strong character work and horror
Yeah.
movie kind of stuff. Like all the stuff I love is just right there. Right.
Yeah.
So that was like I said, that what really got me into it. So like where were we? So watching stand-ups. Watching stand-up
Yeah.
when I was young was like the thing that I was always into. But I knew that like I have like an offbeat and a quirky sense of humor. And that wasn't always I could do like the class clown thing and get the laugh from the class or whatever. But quite often it was from me like kind of like licking a rubble-fied heart or something like that in science class, or doing the weird thing, kind of like being gross or like kind of more shocked. Um, so I knew I could get that reaction, but the idea of like making people laugh
Mm.
guaranteed was scary to me. I knew if I went in front of
Mm.
like a group of people and I told them a joke, maybe three of them might laugh, maybe no one would laugh. But if I went in front of a group of people and somebody came out of nowhere and kicked me in the face and then I hit them with a chair, every single one of those people is going to react. So that was
Yes.
kind of why I led me towards professional wrestling. And also pe- being from Calgary, I saw this like Canadian stardom is weird. It's
Yeah.
a fucking elusive, man. So
Yeah.
to see this kind of step to superstardom with Brett, where it was like, oh, he was a
Mm.
local star. Okay, then he started traveling in Europe and then Japan and stuff, and then he got
Mhm.
signed to WWE, and then he became the champion. Like there was a step-by-step process to becoming like a mega star and
Yeah.
actually getting like seen by the world. You know what I mean? And becoming the performer that I always wanted to be. Or kind of watching the local it wasn't seeing that many versions of that within comedy or other places that I wanted to go. So that's what led me to wrestling to begin with. But I always knew like stand up was something I wanted to do, was there in like my heart and wanting. So then I like came to Vancouver, was fortunate enough to get booked in a stand up or a sorry, improv versus wrestlers show. They wanted wrestlers to try their hand at improv. So I was like, I'm more than willing to do it. Being the
Fuck
drama
yeah.
kid, I was like, okay, let's do this. Went there, got in with with the improv people. They really liked me. We hit it off. Started doing improv. Did that for like 8 years. Then was like, okay, I'm gonna try sketch. So I did sketch, and then I'm
Yeah.
like, fuck it, I need to do this. So in 2019, I like did did my first like open mics, started rolling with that at my birthday that year. I was like, I'm gonna fucking take a swing at this because it's what I've always wanted to do. Eat crow, eat shit.
Oh
And
yeah.
then so yeah, it was the beginning of 2000 or the end of 2019. Then the pandemic happened right after that, right? So then I
Right.
was
Yeah.
like, started doing Zoom shows, and I kind of think it was actually maybe the perfect time for me to have started
Mm.
dipping my toes. So like I got in there, bombed, then was like, no, didn't have any wrestling, had something else to kind of focus on, write jokes, kind of perform. There was these weird Zoom shows, or there were shows where I was like performing behind a sheet of plastic. So that it was freaking weird. And like these social
Yeah.
distance shows where there's like four people scattered in a gigantic room. But bombing in those rooms wasn't so bad and stuff. And
Mm.
then kind of the ball kept rolling from there and like
Mm.
met a new community. And I
Yeah.
realized this community is the same as the other community. You know, they're all just these people who will want to express themselves. They want
Mm.
to share what's inside and let that out, and they want to
Yeah.
show themselves at an 11, and they want to, you know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
necessarily fit in with the mainstream, but you know, they're their own thing and their own community that supports each other and pushes each other. And so I kind of fell in love with not only the art, but then the community as well. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like not only why I tried it out, but why I've stayed around.
Yeah, it's it is that thing. Having been, I was similar to you. I was a drama kid in high school. All that kind of stuff. And you're right. Yeah, I know. I have a BA. I have a bachelor in theater. But it is that funny thing of when you recognize that all performing artists are just they're the same person, just with varying degrees of time spent in the gym. Like
That's
it's
hilarious. Yeah, and different different skill sets in the gym for sure.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, they go to different machines, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that's why there's a machine for all of us.
exactly. But it is, stand-up comedy is a beast unto itself. I was not prepared for it. I having done live performance in various facets before. I didn't realize how quick that feedback loop happens in
Totally.
comedy. Where it was like you say something and they react right there in a way that no other art is like that.
Totally,
And
it's true. It's like if you're performing in like a play or something like that, there is that delay. There is like that you get to say something and then there's that beat while
yeah,
they're digesting it, and then the reaction kind of where in stand up it's like, no, it's right there, right there.
literally, and keep going, and
Yeah,
and
definitely.
you're the one who's got to keep it up, right?
100%. If you
It's
get a
like,
good
oh,
reaction, then you can't sit in it for a second. You got to just keep
right,
going.
yeah,
You're like, oh, that's good.
yeah,
Now I have to keep going.
oh fuck,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I haven't been back many times since. I do need to, I actually, it's something I want to do more this year. But I'm curious, so you were saying there's lots of like overlaps. I'm curious if you see, like, what are some sort of like, I don't like focusing on divisions, but like I'm curious about, like, how do you see comedians showing up sort of in community differently from, whether it's from pro wrestlers or from other art communities that you're a
Mm.
part of.
I would say that like one of the cool things about comedy, like stand up, is there's like that riffing aspect. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't necessarily see that with other, at least from me, from other art forms, where you can kind of go to another artist and be like, hey, this is my act. I'm struggling with this piece of it. Could you maybe help me with that? Or could we maybe like, riff around this idea? I'm stuck here. Could you get me out of this jam? Where I don't necessarily see that in professional wrestling, for example. I
Right.
don't necessarily see how I want to do this move, and this move, but then it's just not a place where we tend to go to each other. So it's really
Mm.
cool to see that and to see bits come up because it is talking and because it is joking. And when you're with funny people, funny stuff comes up. So it's
Mm.
like the more you're around comedians, the more comedy happens and the more it like the ball flows. Where if I'm hanging out with wrestlers at, sure, ideas will come up, but moves not won't necessarily because we're not fighting each other in the
Right.
Applebee's. They kick us out for that.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
but with comedy, you can be riffing all the time and be there for that.
Yeah.
So really supporting each other's shows and stuff like that, I see a
Mm.
lot of too, where wrestlers, it's hard to sometimes be at a show that you're not booked on.
Yeah.
Because if you're in the audience, people might wonder if you're doing a run in or if it's part of an
Right.
angle or like kind of looking over the whole night at you or asking you why you're not on the show, or you might take attention away from the show or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
just actually going to the bathroom and they're like, oh, I thought he touched his chair like he's going to pick it up. Like, no,
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
pick up my chair and hit
No,
anyone right now.
I gotta piss.
I got to piss.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can go and support other comedian shows and stuff like that. Also,
Yeah.
like the fluidity of comedy
Mhm.
is really nice. Where like wrestling's pretty set in stone, where
Yeah.
there's less likely going to be a drop in. You're not going to be like, oh my goodness, so and so just walked in, and we're going to have them fight this guy tonight. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So that doesn't
What is it?
normally happen in wrestling. So it's kind of nice to see that lack of rigidity and like kind of anything can happen, which can happen in wrestling too. But normally we know the anything that's going to happen in wrestling.
So I want to spin. I want to keep building out on this. One of the sort of
Yeah.
central, sort of, I guess, explorations that I've been adding in recently is, this idea of
Just
things feel pretty dire lately. Things are pretty intense in the news, and the way things are going.
Yeah.
And
Well,
as a sort of a way to counterbalance some of it, but also to recognize that, as I've been talking about a lot on the show, it's okay and it's healthy to be tuned in and to be aware, and it's also okay and healthy to take breaks and to focus on other things
for
and
sure.
to build yourself up. What's one thing that's given you hope going forward?
I think I was actually one thing I was struggling with right before, let's say November,
Hmm.
was my being an aging punk. Being
Right.
that I've always felt like that people like that word has different triggers for people or whatever, but I've
Sure.
really always leaned into that ethos of it's kind of like the working class, people, the unity kind of the anti corporations, the doing it, the DIY energy and all that kind of from the underneath, the underdog energy. And that's always been kind of where I felt I've come from. And it's one of those things that you're told you can't be like a punk your whole life or whatever. Like it's one of those things I'm 42 and I've got green hair and that I think I went through the age where I should have maybe got rid of it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like when you're in your mid 30s or early 30s, you're like, maybe I should shape up or something like that. I felt like I'm looking at myself, I'm like, oh, I never did that thing.
Yeah.
And wrestling
I
helped
get.
me not have to do that.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, but long story short, I was feeling how long can I do this? Like, is this foolish? But now I was right all along. Like, why the
Yeah.
fuck would I change now? You mean
Exactly.
I'm gonna sell out and now I'm gonna put on a tie? Now I'm gonna go buy myself a disgusting electric car from the person who sells them just down the street from my house on Wall Street, which they should not be, or on, yeah, which they should not be doing on Powell in Vancouver. Gross. But
Yep.
yeah, now I feel that energy's all focused on where I've
Hmm.
always felt. And these kind of things, maybe I was too punky, or maybe I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
should have sold out, and maybe I should have these things. And I'm like, no, it's always been what I've always felt, and what my fears are somewhat valid.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Your anxiety is lying, but your fears can be valid. Um,
Yep.
so it just feels like that, and to hear the fight that's coming. And I'm
Mm.
sorry we have to do it. Just like I'm sorry anyone feels it, mental health issues. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but it makes me feel less alone. You know what
Yes.
I mean? And seeing the uprise of punk art and punk patches and punk stickers and just that fight back from the underdog that I've always felt that I was part of, and that maybe I should put down my Molotov cocktail. You know what I mean? And no, I don't feel that right now. I feel more unity between those people. Um, and I'm seeing in the art. Art can
Yes.
get boring. Art can get boring when it's not
Yeah.
pushed. You know what I mean? When it doesn't have
Yes.
anything it has to say, it gets really soft, and that can be awesome. And I myself can get that way too. But when I have something to say, there's just so that is what I've been seeing. I've been seeing this
Yeah.
fire from the weirdos,
Yeah.
and that's what has been inspiring me and continuing my fight.
Yeah. I love that, and it is that funny. It is that funny push pull of, you said, I'm sorry we have to fight, and I'm with you 100%. I'm not somebody who's raring to go and can't wait. I'm never somebody who's like, if I had been there or whatever, it's like I'm not looking for a fight. But it's also like when things pop up, we can't just passively wait for them to blow over. I think I've said this on the show before. If not, I mean, who knows? But it's the idea of there's a difference between a coward and a pacifist.
Mm,
A coward just doesn't fight, whereas a pacifist knows when to not fight. And I think that there are moments where you do have to step up, and that idea of complacency in art has been something that has really plagued myself and yeah, art across the board. And it's tragic that it takes things like what's going on to trigger these things, and at the same time too, it is all it's all a part of the same circuit,
yeah,
right? And we all bear a responsibility for where the world is, right? It's not just somebody else's fault. It's all like we all play a part, right?
totally,
And so recognizing what part we've contributed, I think is really vital. And that's what the art I'm seeing, and definitely the art I'm creating, the art I'm trying to participate in is is trying to say, at least, right?
For sure. Yeah, yeah. Like you said, we're all in this together, and it shouldn't be a blame game. It
Hmm.
should be an acceptance of what part did I do and what part can I do better. You know,
Bingo. Yeah. Yep. Um, that really leads into this last core question, is this question of, friendships. I used to have this question at the very beginning, and I've moved it to the end because I think it really encapsulates so many things. When you look at the broader and then you boil it down to the sort of the singular. And I'm to start with, the very broad question is, what does it mean to you to be a friend?
I think that having someone that's there for you, that you can kind of rely on and reach out to, someone you can share commonalities with,
Mm.
someone that you can feel like meant to be like, listen, I feel alien about this and I feel alone. And maybe it's not gonna be every single one of your friends that have the same thing. And that's why having a vast group of friends is important. But having that person or persons you can go to that you're like, I had this really quirky thought. Does this correspond with you at all? Or, you know what I mean? A place to feel less alone. So I think
Yeah.
that's what it means is people that make us feel less alone.
Yeah.
That's
And how do you find yourself maintaining connections? You obviously you have to travel a lot, and so how do you find yourself maintaining these connections and sort of making sure they're each sort of fostered properly,
I honestly find that really hard. And that's been like
Yeah.
on my
Yeah.
like New Year's like resolutions for the last 2 years is to be a better
Yeah.
friend. Because I find that for me, I make really good connections quickly. So like I make friends quick, which
Mhm.
means I'm not necessarily great at keeping friends because for some reason, like I have that, like I can do this, I do it and I make friends and I have like, oh, I met this person last week and now we're doing this. And then somebody new. And it's not necessarily, I don't have these traumatic breakoffs with people.
Yeah.
It's just kind of who's in my, like, I think we're having a good connection right now.
Yeah.
And I
Big
feel
time.
that I'm able to do those kind of things, but then long term,
Yeah.
not so much.
Yeah.
So, still trying to make sure, like, I'm dropping line, trying to do what I just said to you earlier about, like, if I have something that pops up in my head and it's like, "Oh, my buddy Dar from high school would love this," then I
Mm.
message Dar right away,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
take a snapshot and send it to him or whatever, and, like and then that only opens the door, and then from there, try and have more than a conversation about the thing we share, ask about his
Mm.
family, and go from there. But like I said, I'm not the best at that. I have friends that I've kept for a long time, but again, it's something I'd like to work on. What are your tips?
Oh God, it's funny. I don't have any. It's why I ask other people. Right? It's the thing of like, for me, I have a similar experience where it's like I have no object permanence,
Mhm,
so it's like,
mhm.
whoever's in front of me and whoever's active, I'm like, oh, you must be my best friend because I'm looking at you.
Yeah,
You're the only thing that exists, right?
totally.
So yeah, I try to do similar things. I actually, I have really worked on just getting over the shame, and I have set alarms, like just like the nerdiest, like most random alarms throughout my day all week. I've set just like sporadic, like text somebody or call somebody or send somebody a message or do something, and I've also done this other thing where I've started, whenever a friend mentions something they like or mentions something that they, maybe they want or want to do or anything like that, I have like a little dedicated notes page to each of my friends,
Oh, cool.
and I just add the little note in the page. And then if I'm like at the grocery store and I come across that chocolate bar that my friend liked, I'll pick it up and I'll take it to them, or that kind of thing. I have a friend who loves Red Bull, so anytime I go over to their place, I always make sure to bring a Red Bull. That kind of
Cool.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah.
That's really sweet. And I think that, yeah, with the ADHD, like is something I
Mhm.
also suffer from. I think that that's really important. The lists and stuff like that, as much as the making plans and making lists and setting
Yeah,
alarms is the hardest thing we
it's
could possibly.
impossible.
It's impossible.
Yep.
But when we
Yep.
do it, it makes such a big difference. You know what I mean? And it's a
Exactly.
one-time thing. It's really
Yeah.
hard to do, but then you can stress about it for an hour, then do it, and then it's done. You know what
Yep.
I mean?
Big time.
So it's worth those things. So
It
yeah,
is.
I think that's a good way to do it. Do you text when it says text somebody? Is it anyone in particular, or do you have
It depends. I actually have different alarms for different friends.
that?
So yeah. So it's like, I got this app that I kind of built. I was using it, but then it asked me to pay. So I instead just took the features and I put them in my clock. You know what I
Perfect.
mean?
Yeah.
Right? So it's got like notifications for like close friends, and then like family, and then like kind of like broader friends and
Cool.
stuff like that. So it'll be like, some people who I want to make sure I talk to every week, some people I want to make sure I talk to it kind of roughly every 2, 3, maybe every month kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then what I'll do, if nobody immediately springs to mind, what I'll do is I'll go through my Instagram like mutuals, and that'll also give me a chance to be like, has anybody unfollowed me?
Okay.
Right? But I'll just kind of like scroll, and like maybe it'll be on the feed if somebody random pops up, or maybe it'll just be in the follow list if somebody pops up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't talked to them in ages, so I'll send them a meme, or I'll like
Cool. Yeah.
that kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I do similar things like that for sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
I try and like, I don't have notifications, but that's definitely a great way to do it, is like the alarms and stuff.
It feels really autistic. Like it feels like extra mentally ill,
Yeah.
but
Whatever.
my phone's just like constantly going off, and I'm like, oh no, I gotta go be a friend for a few minutes, right?
It feels like alien. Like I've
Yes.
been thinking about
Yes.
this, like the concept of like, they say that there's a good chance that aliens are walking the earth. You know what I mean? Do they know that?
Yeah, that's just it, right?
Do they
Exactly.
freaking know that? Or are they just struggling with everything
Yep.
in life? But they're like, why is this so hard? And they're like,
Yep.
Zortan, there's a reason this is so hard.
You were stranded on this deserted backwater planet millennia
Exactly.
ago, right? Yeah. I Oh my god, though. I really think you're onto something. I think that the aliens forgot that they were aliens,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah. We
just
don't
got
know. What do you
Yeah,
think we know? What do you think we know? And why do you think we're in power? We're not. We're trying to figure out how to communicate with our friends.
uh, oh my god, I love it. I'm cognizant of the time, so I want to try and just get one or two just really quick last questions
No, for
before I
sure.
let you go. This has been just absolutely lovely.
Agreed.
Before anything, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, and like it's been awesome. So I really do
I
appreciate it.
appreciate this too. Yeah, it's always nice to reach out, and I think we both have that object permanence thing. So it's nice to like have somebody here to chat with and to talk about this stuff. Like this
Yeah,
whole conversation has been about community, about making connections, about having similarities and finding those things, and talking about the things that bring us joy rather than the things that push us apart. Right. So thank you.
that's just it. That's just it. That's very much the objective. Like that's a baseline objective, is to be like a bit of a, I'm very I'm very aware of the news. I'm very aware of what I agree with and what I don't, but I don't necessarily amplify that stuff in this sphere,
Yep.
very mindfully, because it's like, no, this is a place for joy and connection. There's times to talk about division, and it's
Exactly.
just not here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find you actually don't need to. Like, I think it's pretty all. I don't know. I think if you're
Yeah, actually, it's
truthful,
pretty obvious, Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like, I don't feel
yeah,
I've ever had to really talk about my politics. I talk about
yeah.
others. Me talking about mental health stuff is talking about my politics. So that,
That's that's it right there.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
think we all have a cause that we are kind of drawn to. And I think if we kind of do that, then we don't need to do this other stuff.
big time. Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. Um, um, as a bit of a wrap up, we've already talked about some actionable things, but I always love to leave listeners on a bit of like a something they can try out, this week. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, what is something that listeners could try doing to be a more effective friend, either to themselves or to their community at large?
Be a more effective friend.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's going to have to start with like, I think being open about what you like, doing that, because then it's a way that you can bring in new people without with doing something for yourself at the same time. It's just everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would suggest going to a show. We need to support Canadian. Let's go to something that you like. There's got to be Vancouver's, as much as people like to complain about it not having things. It's not so much. Being from Calgary, I think you probably noticed that too. That like
Oh yeah.
I guarantee if I looked at on like events right now, I could find 2 drag shows, a music show, a burlesque show, 4 stand-up comedy shows, an
Yeah.
improv show, all these things. So take a chance on something that you've always wanted to go see. Go support your friend's show. Go to their art show. Go buy their sticker. Go do that thing, because
Yeah.
that's what especially at this time right now, we got to be supporting each other. We got to be supporting Canadian. We got to be doing all that stuff. So it just seems like the easiest way to do it is go have fun at your friend's show.
Yeah.
Fucking easy. It's gonna be awesome.
That's something my therapist always says. He's like, it actually takes less effort to be authentic than to not be.
I don't think I can be not authentic.
Right, exactly. You know?
It's
And
so much work.
it takes no effort at all to just be yourself, you know?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
And something you spoke on earlier that I actually kind of like pinned in my head was the like turning ourselves up in the ring. And I think that
Mm,
gets said a lot. I think that's the place I get to be myself.
mm,
I don't think
mm.
I'm turned up. I think I'm turned down.
Elsewhere.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
mask. I'm not a luchador. I don't wear a
yeah,
mask in the ring. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
really me. And I'm there
yeah,
and I'm shirtless and I'm sweaty and I'm making mistakes and I'm breathing heavy and I'm as raw as I've ever been. I'm not
yeah.
wearing this fake stuff on top of me. You know what I mean? So I might have a different name. That's my chosen name. That's
Yes.
everything I've chosen to be, not anything society's told me to be. So
Yeah.
it's turning myself up. It's letting myself be the 11 I was born to be.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
not a 10, baby. I'm an 11.
I think that's beautiful. And, I really appreciate that reframe because I think that that's spot on. And I think that that, again, circles back to that thing of authenticity and that thing of like, some people are just bigger than society allows them to be in a day-to-day life,
Just obnoxious.
yeah,
I get that. If I'm walking around, you've seen me perform in the ring. If
yeah,
I'm doing that walking through the gym, that guy's it's just
it's hard.
doesn't
It's
fit in. It
difficult. Yeah,
doesn't work.
It's difficult to be around,
It's
like, yeah,
alien.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But we also, I will say, like, Canada is obviously a society of, we have tall poppy syndrome,
Mm,
like you were talking about Canadian famous stuff, right? Like we very much chop down the tall poppies,
yes.
and so there is a piece of me that's like, that's not a you problem. That's a society's fault thing, like,
Fair enough. I appreciate
right,
that.
Ravenous Randy fucking Myers. This has just been such a treat. Where can listeners find you? Where would you like to point people to learn more about you?
Well, I think you mentioned Boom Wrestling, which is local to
Mhm.
Vancouver, and I think that's the place that I would definitely support. But again, support any professional wrestling that you can
Yeah.
find. Go to your local show. Professional wrestling's great. Come check out Boom Pro Wrestling. Come find me in Seattle at Defy Pro Wrestling. You can find me in Portland at DOA Pro Wrestling. I'm going to be in Vegas for a WrestleMania weekend, so come check me out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all sorts of different things. Or come to Comedy Vinyl, which is the show that me and my partner Ishmael Jai, my comedy partner, let's make that. My comedy partner Ishmael Jai host monthly here at Slice of Life and Art Gallery. We do a stand-up karaoke show, so we have comedians do 30 seconds to a minute of karaoke before they do their comedy set, so they get real vulnerable, real sweaty, doing something they're not good at, and then they shine at something they're great at. So it works really
Yeah.
nicely.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm gonna come to that.
you
Let
definitely
alone,
should.
I'll make sure that all that is in the show notes. But I'm gonna come check out that show
You
because that
definitely
sounds
should because you might need to
fantastic.
be on that show one day.
Bingo. Yeah, I gotta get some reps in first, But I have no sign off yet. I've been doing this show for almost 8 years, and I still haven't come up with a sign off. I was thinking of doing "Thank you for being a friend," but I think that one's already taken.
Possibly.
But yeah, just thanks one last time, and I guess yeah, this is my sign off.
I love it. Okay. Bye, friends of all genders.
And that's it. Thank you one more time to Randy for coming on the show. What a pleasure it was to chat with them. If you want to see Randy perform, go check out Boom Wrestling in Vancouver. They do a show every last Saturday of the month. Come check it out. I'll be there. We will scream for Randy together. You can also get more information about other places that Randy is performing, as well as their comedy, all sorts of other creative outlets that they're doing. You can find that in the show notes. And while you're poking around there, why not sign up for the Friendless Substack? You're going to get a free update of all the goings on in my world, along with my writing, recommendations for books, movies, music, all sorts of fun stuff, behind the scenes, sneak peeks, everything and anything is on the table to pop up there. So be sure to sign up so you don't miss an update. While we're on the topic of pro wrestlers, as I talked about in a previous episode, my next book of poetry, First Dates with Pro Wrestlers, is going to be going up for pre-sale in a couple weeks' time. So if you don't want to miss updates on when that is coming out, when you can get your copy, be sure to follow me on Instagram and on TikTok at FriendlessPod so you don't miss an update. It's a ton of fun. I'm so proud of this book. I cannot wait to share it. That is coming so soon. But that is going to do it for me this week. So let's wrap things up here. Thank you so much for listening. And I can't wait to share all the Friendless goodies coming down the pipeline. But hey, let's not worry about that right now, because that is then and this is now. So for now, I'll just say I love you and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweeties.